in the second house. I am co-hosted today with Emily from Ephemeris Astrology. Did I say it right?
You did not.
Ephemeris.
You know what?
Ephemeris.
There you go.
Yes.
I'm actually probably going to be changing it because it gets butchered so often. I'm like, and I go by Astrology with Emily on Instagram. So I'm like, we might as well just make it more about my name.
Sorry, I tend to always butcher it.
You are not the only one. Do not feel bad. Seemed cool at the time. Marketing 101 should have taught me that, but it definitely did not.
It is cool. Super cool once you explain it. But I can't. I know it in my head. As soon as I say it out loud, I'm like, well, shit, I said it wrong.
I had this vision when I first started that I was going to open up a storefront one day. Cool. And I feel like that would be like the coolest name for a store. And I could like see the big like looking sign on the front of it. So like, that's kind of where it came from. But then COVID hit and, I've really stumbled into like the online space and I'm actually really liking it. So I don't know if I'll ever go to a storefront. And I'm like, we might not need that name.
Well, now that we know that you're from Ephemeris Astrology, why don't you give us a quick background on who you are, what you do, and why you're doing that? I'm just going to load it on my phone so that we don't miss any comments.
Sure. So as Amanda said, my name is Emily McCall. I am an intuitive astrologer. I have been reading charts professionally for about a year now, but I've been studying astrology for probably like 5 years now. And I just love looking at somebody's chart, their birth chart for their soul's purpose. That's really my jam. It's where I like to be. I love looking at karmic wounds and blocks and patterns that are holding you back from really stepping into what you're here to learn and embody in this lifetime. And I really like to fuse intuition into my process, meaning, if a message from spirit comes through during a session, I'm a clear and open channel to share. I integrate oracle cards when need be or tarot cards. So it's just a little more intuitive, like holistic approach to astrology, which I really like. And so I like to hang out on Instagram. If you want to connect with me, that's where I like to live at astrology.with.emily.
Cool. Well, I'm super excited for today's chat. Mind you, I'm always excited, just kind of sit down and hang out with you. So it doesn't really matter what we're talking about. We're just going to wing it. We really do have a plan, but you never know where we're going to go from there.
Yeah, it's kind of like when I have a podcast as well, Good Juju Only. And I always say that to my guests too. I'm like, I have an outline for us, but know that natural curiosity and conversation is going to take hold and we could end up way over here. So valuable. But yeah, this kind of feels like the same way. There's a rough plan in place, but questions might come up and we're just going to go with the flow.
Exactly. And with that being said, for anyone who's watching, if you have any questions along the way, just drop them in the comments. Or if you, for some reason, want to send a direct message, that's totally fine. You can send a message to either myself or Emily on Instagram, and we'll try our very best to answer it while we're live.
Yes.
All right. So are we starting with Venus or second house or?
Let's start with the second house.
Okay.
So in a birth chart, there are 12 different houses, and all that is it's kind of pie slices in the sky. It's how we divvy up the sky, and each pie slice correlates to an area of your life. So the third house is how we learn and communicate in our early life. So whatever's ruling your third house, that's that area of life we're zooming in at. And the second house is all about our values, our money, our personal money, and our resources. And much deeper than that, it's really what we need to feel stable and secure. And it can be resources that you have or that you hope to have that make you feel safe, worthy, fulfilled, and valued. So when I'm looking at somebody's personal relationship to money, this is one of the big places I'm going to look, because it's going to tell me what you like to spend your money on, because that's what you value. And, a good example of this would be my second house is in Cancer. So Cancer is all about nurturing and feeling like you are in a sacred space and emotional. So for me, that's what I value. I value a sacred space. And honestly, that is where I spend my money. You know, I spend it on crystals for my home or sage or that really cozy blanket or the perfect piece of furniture. It's creating that. And that's what I value. Very like emotional spending.
Very cool. So just a few words that popped up for me then, and I don't even know if this is a thing. Can you compare houses to chakras? Like
Hmm.
when I think second house, the way you described it, I kind of think how it would be very similar to a root chakra because it's about money, stable, security. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's a thing.
No, that's a good point. I'd have to dive deeper into that. And honestly, I feel like this has come up before and I'm like, oh, I need to look at that. And but as far as the chakras correlating, because there are certain tarot cards and archetypes that correlate with each of the signs. And that's honestly what I would look at is the signs, because they kind of rule the entire chart. Once you know them, you can kind of break down the houses. But yeah, I'm sure, I'm almost certain that there probably is a chakra that aligns with each, because you do see that kind of repetitive pattern through them. And second house is ruled by Venus as well as Taurus. Taurus likes to live there. And Taurus is all about being grounded, being stable.
Interesting.
Yes, allocating your resources. And that is very root. And I would probably even say maybe a little bit of sacral chakra as well.
Sorry, just before you keep going, I noticed you said personal money. Is
Yeah.
there a part that's specific to like business money, or is it all kind of the same thing?
So the second house is our money. The eighth house is other people's money, other people's resources. So that can be a business entity if if you're getting technical when you're like, I'm an LLC, it's separate from me. But it could also be partnerships, like business partnerships, other people's money in general.
Interesting.
Yes. So you could have, this is a good thing to bring up. You could have a really strong eighth house placement. So another example, I have Capricorn in the eighth house, which is very like business, CEO, structure, discipline. That's a really good place to have, a business like other people's money. But on the flip side, I have Cancer in my own personal money. And that's maybe not as good because it's emotional and like a lower vibrating state. Like, I can have very emotional reactions to my own money, but I'm all business when it's like other people's money. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. That's actually really cool the way you described it like that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Okay, we're good for right now.
Any questions in the chat box yet?
Not yet. Yeah, take your water.
I had talked so much today, so my voice is like going. I'm so sorry. Okay, so then we have each of the signs. We can go through what each of them might be in that second house. So let's say you have Aries in your second house. You might be really impulsive with your money. Aries is very reactionary. So it might be I see this bike. I really like this bike. I'm going to go buy this bike. Not checking your account first, not looking at your budget for the month, like they're just very reactionary and, want in the moment. So if you have that Aries flavor to your second house, that's something to be aware of. I have a tendency to be a little bit impulsive with my money. If you have Taurus in the second house, you might have a tendency to hoard your money. Taurus really is like a collector, and they like to kind of have all their things and all of their money and just sit with it. On the other side of that coin, they also really like high end and luxury and sensory experiences. So whereas they're not likely to maybe go buy a new RV to go cross country driving, they're more likely to have the spa day and add on the hot stone massage. Yes, like they're all about like the sensory things, and that's where they're going to spend their money. Now Gemini energy is already kind of scattered. So they can be a little bit scattered with their money. They can be a little bit all over the place. Their mind can be like a couple different places, not thinking of it holistically. They're very like how it was explained to me. Gemini versus Sagittarius because they are opposites of each other.
Mhm.
Gemini walks into a crime scene and they say, there's a gun, there's a body, there's blood, and they see all the pieces. Sagittarius can walk into that same crime scene and say, there's been a murder. Like they see it all together, whereas Gemini is just seeing all the pieces. So when it comes to your money, you might be a little bit scattered. You might have a hard time putting all of it together, but you also really value connection and community and networking. So somebody here is going to spend the money on like the newest iPhone because they want the quality camera where they can take all the good Instagram story. You know what I mean? Like that's that Gemini in the second house. Cancer in the second house, I kind of touched on, a little bit more of an emotional spender. And they also really love their home, their sacred space where they feel really nourished and safe. So they're the ones that are going to go to Pier 1 and buy the really cool egg chair and like, you know what I mean? I mean, I would. Oh my God. And then you have Leo, and Leo likes to spend money on themselves. They're a little bit, because they're ruled by the sun. You know how you always say the sun doesn't revolve around you? Well, it does revolve around Leo. So they might spend a lot of money on themselves, but Leo is also really, really connected to their children. So you might see them spend a lot of money on their children as well. That's where they're going to allocate and invest all of their resources. But Leo loves the name brand stuff. Like give them the Coach purse, give them, the Burberry coat. Like they want top of the line. They like to look nice. They like to look flashy. So that's probably what you value are these like societal pressures of being wealthy, I think is how I want to say that. And then we have Virgo. God love them. They are the budgeters. They are the conscious spenders, right? They're the ones that are going to have the Excel sheet with every single expense, and they're going to be keeping track of everything. It's going to be so organized and color coded, and maybe no, we have not touched on Pisces yet. Thank you for the question. So yeah, Virgo is a good placement to have in the second house because you are so conscious and so organized with your money. And they really value their health and their wellness. So you're going to see Virgo spend money on maybe alternative healing. Like they're going to go get their acupuncture. They're going to go see a holistic nutritionist, things like that. That's what they're really valuing and going to spend that money towards. Libra in the second house. They're going to spend money on things that they perceive as beautiful. So whether that's makeup, really nice clothing, whether that's a piece of art for their home, things that they consider to be artistic and beautiful, they are going to spend their money on. And what's interesting with Libra is because they're so connected in partnership, they're also really giving with their money to their one-on-ones, like if you're in a romantic relationship with a Libra, they're going to spend a lot of their money on you. But on the flip side, they expect it in return because it's very collaborative. Scorpio in the second house is a cool one to have. They're very intimate with their money. So Scorpio can be very like, I'm not going to let you in. But once they do, it is like full intimacy. Like, let's join bank accounts, like they're very intimate with their money and they're going to like to spend it on transformation. So they're the ones that are going to, maybe book the coaching sessions with someone that are really deep and transformative. They're looking for that deep self transformation. And that's where they like to focus that money on. Sagittarius is always a fun one in the second house. Sagittarius loves adventure and travel and expanding their mind. That's where that value lives. So Sagittarius probably doesn't really care about the new Fendi bag, but they really care about taking a backpacking trip across Europe. Like that's where that money is going to go. Capricorn in the second, again, very budget conscious, very business minded. They're thinking long term. They're thinking investments. They're probably thinking also multiple streams of income with their money. How can I have multiple ones? And they like to spend it on classier things. So yeah, when I think Capricorn, I think like really classy boss CEO. Like they want finer things, but they're also very practical. So they're not going to spend a lot of money on, a new pair of shoes as opposed to a nice new laptop that's going to help them be efficient and get the work done that they want to get done. They're probably more your like MacBook people. Aquarius is a really interesting one in the second house as well, because they think very futuristically with their money. So Aquarius is always ahead of their time in general. And then when it comes to their money, so you might see them spend their money in places you wouldn't typically think, maybe investing in startups, also very charity driven, giving to causes they think are worthy and help the collective as a whole. And lastly, Pisces, I think Pisces might be a little bit disconnected from money. They like to be more in the astral plane and dreaming. So they might have big dreams for what they want to make and call in. But if they're not really connected to the physical plane, it might be hard for them to manifest it. So Pisces in the second house is a dreamer with money, but it's not always easy for them to call it in if they don't have a good balance of everything else. Especially grounding and learning how to be in their body. They're definitely very spiritual beings. They're going to spend their money on, they're going to spend it on music that like touches their soul. So maybe there's an artist they really connect with. They're going to go to that concert and feel into that experience. Or again, spiritually minded, they might go to a yoga retreat or a meditation retreat. And that's really where their focus is. So that is each of the signs in the second house.
So as you're going through, or as you were going through that, I could think of people that are close to me in my life. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you have to have this sign in your second house. Like you have to. It's the only way that describes your spending. But just for people who maybe aren't aware, can you explain how they can see in their chart what sign is in their second house? Because I'm a Gemini, but I may not be Gemini in my second house.
Right. So you would have to pull up your birth chart, which you can do at astro.com. You just need your birth date, time, and location. A note on the time, the closer you can get to the exact time, the more accurate the chart is. It can be as simple as a few minutes changes the rising sign. So it's really important to have as close to the exact time as you can. And then in the pie slice labeled 2, it would be the sign on the outside of that you would see what sign you were.
Didn't even occur to me that a pie slice would have a number next to it. Like this is 1, this is 2. I'm just like, where is it?
And I do think it's important to note a lot of people use apps like CoStar or Sanctuary, I think is another one. And they're great for like fun, to kind of like pique your interest. But I don't necessarily think that they are accurate, especially the CoStar one. A lot of clients I read now, they do a different house system than I do, but still, even when I pull it up in the one that they supposedly use, things are really off as far as like lineups and signs where things are. So just for fun, go for it. I think they're a lot of fun. I had CoStar for a really long time. But for the sake of accuracy, if you're really wanting to invest in, understanding yourself and your chart better, you can pull it up for yourself in astro.com and look at it. Or you can also book a session with an astrologer to go even deeper.
Cool. So I totally forgot my question. Yep. As soon as I open my mouth, I'm like, it's gone. I was just going to say that I was a total nerd when it comes to astrology, and I have Sanctuary on my phone, and it gives me update or notifications every single morning. I'm like, oh, time to check my horoscope today.
I love how like sassy Sanctuary is, to be honest. Like
I know
sass with it that I'm like, yeah, I like that. Like it's fun.
Yeah, it has quite the personality.
Yeah, it's a good one. I do like them.
Yeah, it never really occurred. Like I know that you have to put in your time, etc., and it's good at least for me with like the Gemini and the Cancer. But I mean, just like all horoscopes, it's fun. Not necessarily, you don't need to like pick it apart. Be like, oh my gosh. I used to have arguments with people. They're like, well, this is a Gemini horoscope and you're a Gemini, I'm a Gemini, but this doesn't apply to me at all. I'm like, dude, I don't care. Like, we're just having fun. It's the freaking daily newspaper. Cool. We're on a break. We're having a coffee. Is this fun? No? Okay. let's talk about something else. Didn't mean to get you all riled up there.
I could go on a soapbox here. It's like one of the things I get so passionate about is like, one, you're more than that sun sign. Like you are the entire chart. It affects, like, every sign is a part of you in some way, shape, or form. And just because you're a Gemini sun, you know, if it's depending on the placement or like the relationship between other planets, like you might not feel really Gemini. You might feel more connected to your moon sign or your south node. Like there's a lot of other things going on in there. I know for a long time, I never resonated with my Virgo sun. I was like, this is not me. I am so Leo. I don't understand. Well, I have 4 planets in Leo. So as I'm getting older, I'm definitely growing into that Virgo sun, which is a love-hate relationship.
Yeah, and I think that's something that isn't really talked about. It's always been, oh, you were born on this day, this is your sign, and like that's it, black and white. And now, like, that's why I love talking to you, because you're like, well, okay, this is actually what it is, but if it doesn't feel like that, that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for saying that. All right. This other question I have is probably closer to the end because I have a feeling it might be a little bit of a tangent kind of thing.
Okay.
So we'll hold off on that. And I think you wanted to go into Venus next.
Oh yeah, let's talk a little bit about Venus.
Okay.
So Venus rules the second house, meaning they're really closely connected. They like to be with each other. What the second house embodies, Venus also kind of embodies. There's a similar flow of energy between the two. So Venus is, yes, our romantic relationships, how we like to receive love and affection and give that as well. But it's also our talents and our gifts and our self-worth is connected to them. So when I'm looking at money, I also like to look at Venus because, one, it tells me if you're having any kind of self-esteem or self-worth issues and where that blockage is. And then it also tells me what you're really talented and what you're really gifted at that could help you make more money if you started to use it.
What? Shut up. For real? It actually says that in the chart? That's insane.
Yes. So I will give you an example.
Okay.
Say that your Venus is in Aries.
Mm-hmm.
That tells me that your boldness, your directness, your courage, your bravery, those are the aspects of you that if you start using those, you can make more money. That's a talent. That's a gift. And you should use that. And it can help manifest more money in your life. If you are a Scorpio, again, that like transformation piece. I know that you are really gifted at going deep and talking about the aspects of life that might be considered dark and vulnerable and raw. And that's a gift. You are able to hold space for other people in that transformative area. And that's what you should be doing to help you make more money, whether that's psychology or shamanism. You know, like there's a lot of different ways that you can make it practical. But if I'm going to look at that Venus sign, I can really pick up, I can start to weave the story of maybe where there's a blockage, or are you using it? Are you not using it? How can we connect it back to that second house? And then I also think it's of value to know if you were born under a Venus retrograde. That can also change the energy of this. So for me, it kind of acts as like a mask. The talent is there, but there is this veil over it that the person, the natal chart person, whoever that is I'm reading, can't see it. They can't see that that's what their talent is and gifts are. It's kind of blocked from them. So an example of this is I was born under a Venus retrograde in Leo. So some of my greatest talents and gifts are being in the spotlight, sharing my story, sharing my voice. But I have a lot of self-worth and self-esteem around doing that hides it. So I don't necessarily always feel like I'm confident enough or that I could actually do that. But I'm telling you, as a person actually growing through this and putting myself out there more, the money is coming in. So when we work with that energy, you'll start to see it tie together.
I'm still blown away by your last comment about how you can just see the talents and how it can help you make more money. That's like, which is, I feel like every single time I talk to you, you're like, oh, your astro chart can show you this, and your birth chart can show you this. I'm like, really?
Can show you so much. I mean, I do karmic astrology. I really love the soul purpose aspect of it and looking at past lives. But there are so many different branches. There's medical astrology where you can look at somebody's health and body composition. There's fertility astrology where people can time down the best times to try to conceive a baby. There's horary where you can find lost items, like there's so many different branches. It's amazing what a chart can tell you.
That's blows me away, for real. Okay, so talents, gifts, self-worth. So if someone is just like, let's say a newbie like me, and they're just kind of poking around in astrology, they see this live stream, they're like, cool, where's my Venus? Or no, where's the Venus in my chart? I think is the right way to say it. Where would they, if I remember correctly, there's a legend like at the bottom of the page and tells you each planet and okay. And
So
then I really would just look.
You can go to that legend. It's a little bit difficult to understand. The easiest way to see it is if you know the symbol for woman, the circle with the line and the cross, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's Venus. So if you find that little symbol in your chart and you look at the sign that it's in, it'll tell you where it's at.
Is it possible that it can overlap two signs?
Depends what house system you're reading. I read in whole sign, which just means that each sign is assigned to one pie slice. They don't overlap. The default for most astrology software that pulls it up is Placidus, where you will see it in different houses, signs in different houses. I find for looking at a birth chart, whole sign is so much more accurate. I think that it complements human design very well, which is another one people like to layer. So I like the whole sign. I think it's much more accurate for what I do. When you're getting into like maybe transits and business charts and other things, it's helpful to look at it in other house systems. But for the sake of looking at your own chart and understanding yourself, I recommend whole sign.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, being someone who is very intrigued with astrology but has no idea how to freaking read anything about it, I would agree. Whole sign is where it's at.
When you're first learning, it makes it easier too, because you're not trying to guess, is this where or is it where? Like it's one sign for one house. So even if you're just starting to learn astrology, I totally recommend pulling it up in whole sign. It makes the learning process much easier as well.
Yeah, I've seen both, and I mean, it's already kind of overwhelming just starting it, and then when you see all the complicated, and I'm like, no, I can't do this. Close the browser, walk away.
It already looks like a foreign language, so
exactly. This is a little bit off topic, and I don't even know. It's supposed to be like two different types of astrology, and I don't know what the other type is, but there's like tropical astrology and a different kind of astrology. Do you have any idea what I'm talking about? Because I don't remember at all.
I do, because I remember when I pull up a chart, I have a million different options. So it's the zodiac. There's tropical, there's sidereal, and there's draconic.
That's it. Oh, I hadn't even heard of the other one.
Yes. And if I'm being totally honest and transparent, I have never dabbled in the other two.
Okay.
And then there's also geocentric and heliocentric, which just means you're looking at it from like the Earth is the center of the chart. So that's why you don't see Earth in a chart. And then there's also heliocentric, where the sun is the center of the chart. So you would see the Earth, I believe is how it works.
Weird.
And then there's Vedic astrology, which is a whole nother animal. It'll drastically change your chart. So when I pulled up my Vedic astrology, I was still a Gemini rising, but I was a Leo sun and an Aries moon. And I'm a Virgo sun and a Taurus moon. So it definitely changes the composition of the chart. It's very, very different. It doesn't even look like the natal chart that you've seen with me. It looks like a grid. Like it's very different. So there are so many other ways you can look at it. But I do think it's of value to say that no matter what system you're looking at it in, you will learn something about yourself every single time that you didn't already know. Every time.
That's probably true.
When I look at it in Placidus, even my own chart, I'm like, oh yeah, I could see that. You'll learn something about yourself every time. So it's a value to look at it and experiment, like just because I resonate with whole sign and the tropical, like somebody else might really resonate with another one,
Yeah, I didn't even realize that there were that many different, I don't know, types of astrology.
There are so freaking many.
I literally didn't even know until like a week and a half ago. Someone's like, "Oh, I'm talking about sidereal astrology, not tropical," and I'm like, "Oh, there's more than one." Like,
Yes. And there's a ton of different actual like wheels that you can pull. Like you can pull composite charts and synastry charts, progression charts. Like there's so much you can pull in all of the different asteroids or star systems if you wanted to look at where they are in your chart. Like you can go real deep.
that's intense and intimidating.
Right? Yeah, I know. Even for me, I'm like dabbling. I think the next thing really calling me to like study and learn and to start integrating into my work is more of the asteroids, especially the ones that are very connected to Greek and Roman mythology around the goddesses, like Pallas Athena and things like that. So I'm really feeling that call to start learning that and integrating that. That might be the next thing you see me do.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting. I like my brain doesn't even understand how that would work, but but I'm still intrigued. You touched a little bit on how a birth chart can show you karmic and past lives, etc. So if you're looking at Venus in the second house, you had said talents, gifts, self-worth. Is there a way that the Venus in the second house can also be tied to a past life experience or trauma, for lack of a better word?
Definitely, if it's retrograde, for sure. Any kind of retrograde for me in the chart, especially with the inner planets, more specifically the inner planets. So if you have Mercury, Venus, Mars, sometimes Jupiter, if you have any of those retrograde in your birth chart, those are definitely indicators that this is karmic energy that you are here to redo. Meaning in this past life, you might, so let's say Mercury, for example. In this past life, you might not have been able to use the energy of Mercury effectively or the way that you wanted to. So maybe you didn't share your truth, or it could be as like literal as your voice was physically taken from you. Or it could be the opposite, where maybe you were really abusive with your voice. You were pushy and you were verbally abusive, and you're here to relearn how to use that energy. So a retrograde definitely tells me that there's some karmic patterns there that you're here to relearn. And a retrograde in a birth chart with an inner planet kind of makes it operate a little inversely, if that makes sense. So the energy is more turned inward. So if we have a Venus, Venus is our love, our beauty, our values, our self-worth, our self-esteem. And if that's reflected inwards, you're kind of always questioning that. It's a little bit more explorative. It's like an extra step of really being cautious and careful and using discernment when using that planet's energy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So you listed off a few planets and if they're in retrograde. I'm going to be totally honest, I don't even remember what they were. But if any of those planets were in retrograde today, is it possible that some past life stuff would be coming up for me like right now?
Honestly, when they are in retrograde in transit, life gets easier for you.
Oh, right. That whole can never keep it straight.
So what happens is like we feel at home when that starts happening. There's not this like weird push-pull between the two. We're like, oh, this feels comfortable. This feels familiar. Okay. Like a good example of this one is Mercury retrograde again. When it goes in transit retrograde, if you were born under one, communication gets really easy. You get a lot of clarity. It's easy for you to like share your voice and speak your truth, Venus, like it's so much easier for you to see your own beauty and really get clear on what you value and what you desire. So yeah, in a way they're kind of gifts because a few times a year you get some like crazy clarity.
Cool. Okay.
And then
I
another way,
mhm.
you could potentially have trauma connected to the second house. Another indicator for me would be if you have Chiron there. If Chiron is in your second house, that is a deep soul wound around values, your own personal money, your talents, your gifts, things like that. So if Chiron's hanging out there, we know there's a lot of work to be done there.
Uh-oh. I remember us talking about Chiron in my chart, and I don't remember where it was.
It's not a bad thing. It gets a bad rap, but you see some really beautiful stuff come out of it when people embrace it and work with it.
Yeah,
I
when you
kind
get
of
to
have,
the end of the journey, not when you're in the thick of it. You're like, this
well, I
sucks.
kind of have this like pseudo case study going on. I didn't mean for it to happen, but so many started to pop up with it that I was like, I'm gonna start keeping my eye on this one. This is big. And I'm finding that people kind of in our generation that were born under Chiron in Cancer, a lot of them have, this is totally off topic, a lot of them have issues with mom, like very deep ones, and they're here to break the cycle for the next generation. So almost always they have children of their own, and that like hits them. They're like, yes, I still hurt from my mom, but I always am like trying to do the opposite for my kid and raise them better. So like,
Wow.
yeah. So I have like this weird case study, and I'm like, you know what? This is a beautiful example of, even though it's hard and it's not always fun and it still kind of hurts, doing the work is really important.
That's actually really cool.
Yeah. It's a great, like, real life example of why it's so important to heal, help start healing your Chiron, even though you might never heal it fully. It might still always kind of hurt. That's why it's so important, because it's making it easier for everybody else in the next generation. And like, healing isn't linear. So you could help, yourself from 10 years ago or yourself 10 years from now. If we're really diving into woo territory, sorry.
That's a good way to say it. I never really thought of it like that. Like, yes, obviously healing isn't linear, and when you heal, you're not necessarily healing you in this present moment. That never really clicked for me.
Yeah.
Hmm. Look at that. Just more light bulbs that are going off as I'm talking to you.
And it's funny too, because the little live stream thing was like right above your head spinning as you were like,
We should do this more often.
sure.
All right. I've gone through my list of questions so far. Is there anything else on the agenda on your side?
Not for me. I mean, if somebody else has questions who's watching, anybody want to contribute anything, I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Random questions are always welcome as well.
It doesn't have to be specific to this.
Also, totally, again, not even related, kind of related. You said in the beginning, each planet can be associated with a sign. No, a tarot.
Each sign, actually planets too. Each sign has a corresponding tarot card in the major arcana, and each planet also has a corresponding tarot card in the major arcana. And I'm diving into this one a little bit deeper because it just kind of came to me, and then I've done like one or two, and I'm really feeling passionate about it and called to do more of it. But like one-on-one creative kind of planning and collaborative process around, say, like you have a new creative project or a new business or a new offering you want to launch, and you're just looking for more guidance. We can use astrology. I can pull up your own chart, your business's chart, your latest offering even could have a chart. We can pull those up. And what I've been doing is looking at common threads, because they're always there, and looking at what sign is there the most of around the things I'm looking at. So a good example of this would be the one person was looking to do a new creative project, possible offering, but really didn't have any clarity around it. So she gave me her birth chart, her business's chart, and her last offerings chart. And her business and her personal chart screamed Empress. And Empress energy, High Priestess energy. She had a lot of Taurus. It was like all Empress, all High Priestess. But her last offering had a lot of the Magician and a lot of the Lovers. And the deeper we dive through her chart, we found that that's actually the energy she should be moving towards with this next project. And we looked a lot at what was going on in her 12th house karmically, and in her 5th house with her creative process. And there was a big connection between the two around a block, a past life block, and how she can navigate through that to really pursue this next endeavor that she wanted to do. So I'm really liking looking at the tarot cards as more archetypes, what those major arcana mean and how you can utilize them in your business or in a passion project.
Interesting. So were you aware of this before you had the interview on your podcast recently? Like, was
No.
this something you're already playing with? Oh, okay.
No.
Cool. Yeah, I was listening to that episode and I'm like, wow, no way. Never really, again, clicked.
Something about it along the lines of like, because like depending on your birthday, you have a card, the numerology of it, you total it up and see what it is. And I think somewhere when I was researching what mine was, I did see that there was a connection. Well, actually there is. My card is the Hermit and Virgo is the Hermit. So my life card as well as my sun sign card is the Hermit. And I'm like, yeah, I can definitely pull that one from time to time.
Cool. Now I want to look into mine, see what mine is.
Good. It's just another layer to add. And I like exploring the archetype of it because, to me, the signs really are archetypes. They're more of like this overarching kind of descriptor or figure of speech that we dive into and we use it as kind of a mirror to look at ourselves. And I think the tarot cards are very similar that way. At least for me, they are.
Yep, I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
100%. All right, well, I'm not seeing any other random questions coming in, so I'm going to assume we've covered everything.
I do want to offer your audience and whoever may watch this just a little discount with me. If you'd like to book any session with me, just use the code Venus, all caps, at checkout. You can find me on Instagram and get to my website from there. And yeah, I'd be happy to collaborate and work together.
Cool. Yeah, I have done a mini session with Emily and it was seriously mind-blowing. So anyone who's reading this, definitely take her up on that. She's really cool. All right. Well, I think that covers everything for today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. This is really interesting and mind-blowing for me.
It's always fun. I love talking about astrology. I talk about it all day.
Well, thank you, Emily, so much for hanging out with me today. For anyone who's watching, don't forget to use that special code if you're going to Ephemeris Astrology. Said it right. You can also find her at astrology.with.emily on Instagram, or you can hang out with myself, The Intuitive Wife, on Instagram as well. Until our next video, we'll see you guys next time.